I think we're live.
Are we really?
That says live.
Remarkable.
Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Assume we're live. We're supposed to kind of slow roll this for a minute or two.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go. We should mute that.
We're
supposed to kind of slow roll this. Figuring out our technology. Hey, we should probably actually just go because we have a lot to get through.
Let's do it.
Let's go.
Let's rock and roll.
Hey, everyone. My name's Isaac.
Hi, guys. I'm Cody.
We are co-founders of CODO Design here in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we're here today to give you 4 practical ways that you can extend your brewery's brand beyond beer. I want to thank Andrew for setting up this conference and for building out the amazing CBP community. And very quickly, before diving in, we're going to be covering a lot of ground. We're going to be talking obnoxiously fast, as usual. And like a lot of the things that CODO talks and writes about, brand architecture is not rocket science. This isn't exactly 101 content either, so follow along. It's like 101.5, 102.
203.
203. Take notes. If you have any questions, we're going to push you for questions the whole time. So drop those in the comment section. We've got, what do we have here?
Got YouTube up over here. We've got the Streamlabs here. So however you guys want to reach out to us is cool.
Drop a question at any point. We'll answer those once in the middle and at the end. And yeah, we'll hopefully give you guys some actionable stuff today. So why are we here talking about this today? Pull up the presentation. So for a macro view of the beer industry, if we can look at this for a moment, from a branding perspective anyway, we've seen 3 major shifts since 2010. So from 2010 to 2017, we worked predominantly with breweries and planning. Everyone was coming to market during that time. Then from 2017 into today, this actually is going on actively. Most of our inquiries and work shifted away from breweries and planning, so people coming to market, to established breweries that were looking to rebrand. That makes a lot of sense if you think about the number of breweries opening in that time. And then sometime kind of overlapping with that same point, around 2019 maybe, overlapping with rebrands, I should say, that's brought dozens of extension projects. So beyond rebrands, which the bulk of the work that we do these days as a branding firm working heavily in beer, is helping breweries extend their brand. I mean, it can be within beer as well, but generally outside of the beer category in some way. That's what we do all the time now. This obviously started as hard seltzer. I think we all kind of know that. RTD is kind of out there trying to take steam away from that. Kombuchas, hard teas, hard coffees. You get into the ad lib world of innovation where you just put a bunch of stuff in a vat and can it, and it sells like bonkers. We've worked with dozens and dozens of these projects now. And along the way, just to show you behind the scenes, we realized there was no great resource to help breweries manage this brand extension process. I'm not launching into a sales pitch. I know it sounds like I am. So we started building one internally, just in-house to guide our own internal client work. It started very simply. We needed to make our own decisions sound. We need to make sure our clients are taken care of and really make sure that we're backing up very important strategy decisions with solid rationale. So we're not just, making up and winging
throwing
it.
Something out there and hoping it works.
Yeah, that we could do that. I don't want to do it if we can help it. So alongside that, we've been writing our next book on this topic on brand architecture. That's what we're here to talk about today. So if you are out there thinking about launching some sort of extension, you should leave this conversation with a few different ways you can do so that will set you up for success right out of the gate. That's our goal. That's what we're here to do. So very quickly, hopefully without derailing the presentation here, I would like you all to comment yes or no, if you could, wherever you're watching this. Has your brewery either launched an extension or thought about or is currently planning to launch an extension? So you've done it already or you're thinking about doing it in the next 12 to 18 months. If you could, please comment simply yes or no. I'd like to go back and look at that later just to kind of get a temperature of what you all are doing. And let's give a maybe 30-second intro on CODO and then dive into the topic here. So CODO, so you know who we are, why you should listen to anything we have to say. We're a 12-year-old food and beverage branding firm. We're based in Indianapolis, Indiana. Cody and I co-founded right after graduating from college so long ago, based on the belief that we can create better work by directly including our clients in the creative process. No more propaganda. I'll leave it there. We founded in 2009. We landed our first brewery client in 2010, and we've since grown to be a seven now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
seven.
7-person shop. I should know that. We help breweries across the United States, around the world brand. And as I mentioned, these days, mostly rebrand and launch extensions. So the bulk of our work over the last several years has been helping large regional breweries rebrand. We define positioning, brand strategy, identity. We do a lot of really internationally recognized packaging. Everything that we touch is geared towards the goal of selling more beer. We do very little kind of gussying up and prettying up anymore. We're brought in to help people solve these kind of complex decisions or brand strategy issues with beautiful designs. So final point here, beyond beer, we are a food and beverage branding firm. So we also do a lot of work with bars and restaurants, hospitality groups, distilleries, cannabis, beverage alcohol is kind of an area that we focus most of our time and energy on, but CPG, food and bev in general. Basically, if you can eat it or drink it, CODO is your huckleberry, and we work with it. So enough about us. Let's talk about you. Cody, we're here today to have an intimate conversation with these lovely people about brand architecture. What fun. I'm going to talk. We're actually going to talk for like 40 slides before you guys see anything. So sorry. What questions do you need to ask, and what path is right for your brewery? Let's start here. Cody, I'm going to drink a little bit, and you tell us about this.
So internally, we define brand architecture as a framework for determining how all of your brands, products, offerings, current and future interact with each other, meaning stuff in planning, stuff that's out in the market, stuff in the past. In other words, how do specific brands relate or differ? How are they positioned and named? How are they priced? How does all this help you build your business? Things like who are they for, who's buying them, et cetera, et cetera.
This was not very important or ever talked about in the early days of our work in beer in 2010, 11, 12, 15, 16 even. No, we talked about it just because it was a thing we're supposed to do coming out of school, like you check your box. But it became a real thing when people started extending their brand beyond beer. So
as the market got more and more crowded, people started trying new things to stand out. And this became a lot more crucial in terms of how you make different decisions surrounding the brewery, because if you're not careful, you can release new stuff that will dilute the perception of your product line. You can even sacrifice or cannibalize or, God forbid, run your brand's positioning up onto the beach by accident if you're not careful with this.
A couple other reasons why this is important to think about is it helps you if you are actively thinking about your brand architecture. In doing so, you can identify new opportunities in the marketplace. This is a big one that isn't super sexy, but it's actually really important and valuable. You can streamline your communications and branding efforts. So if you have a big pile of money and you have to determine, like a marketing budget, where we put that money, if you understand what brands align with what, if everything is kind of a branded house and we're building a big brand versus we have this nation startup seltzer brand that we do, it helps you figure out where to put your money to actually help you grow your business. Again, not sexy, but important. And then finally, we are talking way upstream here. Everything we're talking about is like on a whiteboard with fancy business school graphs. But the most important thing to think about through this process is how your customers view your products on shelf. What we're trying to do is make this very clear and consistent for the end user so that they can see this and understand what is this product, from where does it hail, who made it, and what role will it play in my life. Introducing. This is a working title, Craft Beverage Brand Architecture Spectrum. This is a horrendous name for guys that are supposed to be branding experts.
An awful lot of syllables.
So at a very top line view, there are three core strategies here. There's branded house, endorsed brands, and then a house of brands or portfolio brands. There's actually a fourth category, which is hybrid, but really that doesn't need that much explanation because hybrid is just, none of this is black and white to make this really frustrating and kind of derail everything we're getting ready to spend the next hour talking about. If you are in business for more than 5 or 6 years, you're likely going to have some sort of hybrid architecture, but that doesn't matter. I've probably just wasted some time talking about that. For today's talk, we're going to give you 4 very specific strategies for launching an extension or extending your brewery's brand. So we're going to be focusing on these: a monolithic house, sub-brands, endorsements, and then a true portfolio or house of brands. And so that we can ground this, we were building this presentation and without an example to wrap our heads around, like a through line, it got kind of confusing. So you guys put yourself in this scenario here. Brewery XYZ is launching a new hard seltzer. So that can be an RTD, that can be whatever.
Brewery XYZ is at this talk right now. They might be.
I kind of like that name, actually.
I do
if
too.
They are. So this is, as I mentioned, we handle these projects all the time. We're talking to new breweries all the time about these sorts of projects. And so the core issue that we're trying to solve is how do we position, name, and brand this product? And when we do this, when we go through our decision tree, it starts with a list of questions. We're going to kind of zip through these pretty quickly. This isn't all of them, but this is enough to get you guys thinking about it on your end. So we'll sit down with someone and say, how long have you been in business? How much brand equity does your parent brand have? And this is more than just a question list, because when we talk about brand equity, not to get too in the weeds, but we're conducting a brand audit. We're looking at visual brand equity. We're looking at reputational brand equity. We're looking at all these things. How much equity does your parent brand have?
Mm-hmm.
Are you known for any one thing in particular? You know, are you the sour brewer? Are you the barrel aged stout brewer? Are you making beautiful lagers and nothing else? That's a very important consideration here. Is this your first non-beer extension? That isn't as important as it might sound, because just because you have another non-beer extension doesn't mean you positioned it correctly the first time, but it is worth considering. Do the values and value props of this new product align with your parent brand? Does it make sense that you're launching a hard seltzer? How valuable? This is an important one too. This kind of seems semantic a bit, but with this, so Brewery XYZ launching a hard seltzer, is this something that's you're gonna put it out, it's gonna sell? If it does, it doesn't, whatever, it's just exciting? Or is this something that you see white space in your market, you're really gonna push it hard, it could be a very valuable brand for you? And then we get into the qualitative, but still maybe some of the most important parts here. Does it pass the sniff test, right? Does this seem like something your brewery would release? If you see Brewery XYZ's hard seltzer, whether on draft or out on shelf, you go, oh, I get it. That makes sense. Or it doesn't. Very important. Hard to answer quantitatively, but very important. And will it make sense within your larger story and portfolio? We're trying to answer two core questions to make sure we understand what path is right here. It's kind of the same point, but two sides of the same coin. To what degree should your parent brand be present on this new product? Or again, other side of that coin, do we think that the Brewery XYZ, that parent brand, would be the main driver of this hard seltzer, or will the hard seltzer be the driver of the purchase, and then Brewery XYZ either matters to some degree or doesn't? That's what we're trying to figure out. Possible outcomes and answers. We have 20 more slides with just white text on black backgrounds. Cody, you take over.
Drink a big gulp of coffee and hang with this, because I know this is a little dry.
All those questions, 4 possible outcomes. There are more, but this more or less captures the general kind of 4 that we see over and over again.
So kind of this first scenario is, we're a specialist brewery. So say you're a brewery that's known for its elite portfolio of extremely bombastic IPAs.
Good word.
A seltzer does not necessarily make sense for you in this case. So there should not necessarily be a direct tie, or the tie should be minimized. Kind of the second scenario is, we're not quite sure. You know, we could go either way on this. We could see involving the parent brand is valuable. We could see completely cutting it loose is valuable too. We're not sure which route to go. Kind of the third approach, and this is where you're kind of snuggling up to your parent brand a little bit more here. We think a direct tie makes a lot of sense in the case where, like, you're a generalist brewery with a lot of different types of offerings that brings in a lot of different types of folks. It could start to make sense to tie the parent brand to this new extension that you're creating. And then kind of finally the fourth point, and this is like, we're completely in bed with our parent brand here. A direct tie would work well. We're also excited at the projected volume and opportunity this new seltzer represents.
So we're already running out of time. We need to go quicker. Let's examine why you might, as a brewery out there thinking about launching an extension, why you might have arrived at each one of these previous 4 examples. If there should not be a direct tie, some reasons why maybe you would have arrived at this conclusion. You have a niche position brewery. Cody already mentioned it. If you're making all lagers, honestly, even releasing a hazy IPA wouldn't make sense. So you don't want to confuse your fans. You think we're going to talk about this in several of these categories. You think this product could explode on its own. It could be a very, very fast selling, great brand. We worked with a lot of brands that have done that. It's really fun to be a part of.
Yeah. Like, what happens if this outgrows your parent brand?
Yep.
It has happened to people before.
And then finally, you're also kind of the other side of that. You don't know how this is going to be received. So the value of brand architecture, talking about this entire subject, is that we can create a buffer, or we like the term firewall, between your parent brand and this new endeavor. We're uncertain. You can make the case either way. This is very, very common, because it's very easy to make the case for and against many of these approaches. So you do want a clear separation between your parent brand, because it's a new departure. It's something you haven't done before, and you're just kind of wary of it. The second one, you want to prepare about the possibility that this could become huge. There again, very similar point to the last one. This could grow beyond what we're expecting. We always push people to plan for growth. Everyone kind of plans for the worst, but you should plan for good stuff happening too. And then this is an important one. And this is why we would even leverage the parent brand anyway. you want to cash in on that reputation. You want to get out of the gate. Your distributors are pushing you to do it, so you can hit the ground running. It's a very important thing to do. And let's see here. Number 3, a direct tie makes a lot of sense. You mentioned snuggling up to the parent brand. If you're a generalist brewery, you're making a Baltic porter one week, beautiful pills the next, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Launching anything, it might not necessarily hurt anything. In fact, your customers might enjoy it because you're known for that. So you're a generalist. You have a line of parent branded products that are selling well. What that means is that everything always has lived within that kind of monolithic brand, your parent brand. Obviously, if this is more challenging if you're launching an extension, but let's say for some reason that the extension's value props itself, the liquid, the hard seltzer that Brewery XYZ is launching, the value props that come with hard seltzer in general align with your parent brand in some way, that can definitely make a lot of sense. The 4th point here, we didn't want to include.
It is technically a benefit of this though, because having to create a brand completely from scratch can be a no-go in terms of how much time you have to launch something, how much resources you have to put behind something. So a nice thing of tying in directly with a parent brand, you already have the branding kind of figured out, or at least you have a good start. You're not starting from nothing. If you don't have the time to develop a distinct sub-brand, tacking an extension onto a parent brand when it makes sense can be a more efficient way to get something launched.
Don't do that because you're in a rush. But
it should be a small part of the decision.
We do see it more often than you would. Well, you guys own breweries, a direct tie to the parent brand makes sense. Again, this is where we're similar to 3, but we're really moving on white space. There's no like local XYZ. I shouldn't have used XYZ as a placeholder. There's no cool RTD or something like local to us. So you really want to push something hard. You think your parent brand will help to sell this extension. You don't want people to confuse this new product with your flagship lineup. You aren't sure whether, again, here in the future, we want to spin this product off as its own brand. Maybe this is something we sell, depending on how passionate you are about it or not. And again, similar to what we've seen come up a few times, you want to leverage the goodwill of the parent brand to launch this new product. So now we're going to continue talking and looking at words, but we're going to see pictures here in a minute. Let's examine this more closely. We don't think there should be a direct tie at all. So again, we've arrived at this conclusion. If there should be no tie at all to your brewery, you've gone through this whole rigmarole, this decision tree, you've answered all these questions, then you are creating a standalone brand, thus becoming a house of brands at the parent level. A little confusing, but we'll kind of zip through this. Cody, what's a house of brands? I think most people probably know this at this point.
Yeah, this is kind of the one you can throw around, and it's because the term is so evocative of what it actually is. House of brands architecture is a portfolio of completely independent brands with zero connection to each other or the parent brand. So in this example of Brewery XYZ Seltzer, you would not have Brewery XYZ Seltzer. You would have Seltzer ABC completely disconnected.
Wild Horse Hard Seltzer.
Yeah, we'll call it Wild Mare.
That's good. That's not good. That's a terrible name. But yeah, there'd be no tie to the parent brand whatsoever. We do this because it will not muddle the parent brand. Let's say the Brewery XYZ is a phenomenally positioned brewery. It's doing great work. You don't want anything to take away from that. This allows you, if you have the budget and the resources, it's a really cool way. We're going to show some examples here in a minute of attacking unique verticals and opportunities like wholeheartedly. You don't have to worry about blowback or confusion. And then again, that firewall, right? Each brand is insulated. Everything can grow or fail on its own. Pictures. Hey,
what?
Slide 92. We're looking at images. This is super common in corporate America. P&G, if you look at the back of any shampoo bottle, you're going to see one brand that there's 12 brands that own everything around us. Also, this extends to beverage alcohol. And the reason this is just as a snapshot, someone drinking Guinness has no idea that it's owned by the same company that makes Ciroc or Johnny Walker. That's just how this goes. So this is a true house of brands.
I'm a Tanqueray man.
I'm drinking it right now.
Yeah. Normally, this is kind of the province of big corporate guys, right? Because they can basically put a foot in every single market, and nobody is the wiser as far as, this is Molson Coors. So generally, we see this in restaurant groups, corporate oversight,
even small hospitality groups. You don't have to be a big one. You get into little shadow endorsements, but that's way too in the weeds here. And now we'll kind of go down into the real world for the craft space.
Yeah.
The brewery, so not AB InBev, not Molson Coors. The brewery, known for beautiful barrel-aged beers, they created offshoot beer company because anything that they would produce that isn't that would take away from that positioning. So they've created this beautiful branding, lovely stuff, an offshoot beer company. Our friends at Jack's Abbey, known for making just gorgeous German beer. So again, if that's your positioning and you want to release Marg Party, that would not compute, and people would not like. So you have to. I mean, in their case, it made enough sense to just start another brand. So that's how you have to think about your parent brand in these cases. So Jack's Abbey there'd be another level of like, Jack's Abbey Beverage Incorporated. There'd be a parent brand. There'd be Jack's Abbey in Springdale, and probably some other ones, frankly, with like event spaces and stuff. There's a client of ours, Plain Spoke. So Plain Spoke is a canned RTD cocktail company that also launched. They bought the distillery that was then producing their spirits or their RTDs when they started, and we got to brand lowbrow spirits. So a house of brands, like zero, basically just like super junkily branded well drinks, which
well liquor.
Yeah. And here, this is Boston Beer is my favorite example of this, or favorite illustration of this strategy. So everyone knows, you guys all on this talk probably know, same folks behind Sam Adams or behind Angry Orchard and Truly. The amazing thing is when you start looking at these categories and you read headlines about how big each of these industries are, Boston Beer Company, like Twisted Tea, the last figure I saw was something like 90+% of that the share of that market is owned by Twisted Tea. Truly's like 40%. Angry Orchard, who knows? But they've not only just extended into these categories, but it builds up into an absurdly large business. And held a Dogfish Head in the mix here too. And this, just because you might be making 1,000 barrels a year doesn't mean you can't employ this strategy or these strategies as well. So think about that. The one caveat, we talked about a little bit, but managing multiple brands is expensive. Don't just leave this talk now. I mean, you can leave the talk if you're bored, but don't leave this talk and go, oh, got it, I just need to create a new brand, because you need to put money behind that brand. You need to put a team behind it. You need to invest in the liquid itself. We don't just need to make everything about branding and marketing. You need to do it correctly. So you need to make sure that you can actually manage that separate brand if you're doing that. Recap: if you don't think there should be a direct tie between this new brand and your parent brand, create an entirely new brand. Second one, we're uncertain. We go either way. This is going to be an endorsed brand. Cody, what is an endorsed brand?
Sure thing. So as opposed to the House of Brands model, an endorsed brand is a separate brand that is built to stand on its own, but with a guarantee of quality, aka an endorsement for which it is named, from the parent brand. This new brand itself, not the parent, is the main driver of the sale, meaning you're actually creating a second brand, but you're using your parent brand as a tag to say, hey, this is credible. You know us, you love us. Why don't you try our new thing? Some benefits of this: it will lend you instant credibility. So if someone knows brewery XYZ and they see that they're coming out with Angry Mayor cider or whatever the hell we were talking about earlier, you'll go, oh yeah, I know that brewery. I know those guys. I want to check this out and try it. Immediately you have some credibility. You can market to that established audience. People who already love your brewery can come check it out. And this is kind of nice because you get to use that reputation, but you also get to build a little bit of a buffer in between this new brand and your parent brand, just in case the thing flops or
does really well
or takes off like wildfire. Either way, you have a little bit of protection built in, but you also have that sub brand built and ready to go.
It gallops away, if you will.
Yeah, it hit.
Some examples from the corporate world.
Our fine friends at Kellogg's.
I ate an entire box of cornflakes this morning.
I'm a store brand man myself.
So in practice, literally Kellogg's is part of the lockup on all of these. So Kellogg's Frosted Mini Wheats, Kellogg's Frosted Flakes, that is an endorsed brand. This is like the house of brands that we just showed. This is pervasive. This is everywhere you look in corporate America.
You'll see the little Marriott tag on the bottom of that there. That's on every single one of these individual hotel properties.
And now we get into craft. This is a phenomenal strategy for folks that kind of want to just dip their toes in to try it, because you don't have to stay married. We're already kind of derailing this, but you don't have to stay married to one of these strategies. These can shift over time as things kind of ebb and flow and succeed or don't. So this is Oscar Blues Wild Basin line. So you see literally in the bottom of that can, crafted by or canned by. That's a quick tell. If something says crafted by, made by, from
any of those,
that means it is an endorsed brand. So in practice here, Whitewater, there's even an R ball or a TM on there.
Mm-hmm.
So Whitewater is a standalone brand. Well, it's not standalone. It is a brand with an endorsement from Great Divide. Left Field. So Ice Cold Beers, our friends from Left Field up in Toronto. We help them make ice cold beer, and then that's an endorsed brand from Left Field. Another one from Left Field, Seventh Inning Seltzer. By Left Field.
Left Field. There's your tell. Endorsed brand.
Done. Drop the mic. So Mouse Agave by Founders. Straight Shooter. Again, you see a trademark there. That is a brand that they've created, but with the Shiner endorsement. It's our friends at Prost, a client of ours. So Prost is known for making some of the best German-style beers stateside. And so anything I keep using this example, but even producing a very in-demand hazy IPA would be confusing and hurt their parent brand. So they wanted to release a hard seltzer because with German ingredients and really inspired stuff.
Actually, German wine yeast is how these things are seltzerified, if that's a word.
So it actually made sense to have a very subtle alignment with the parent brand, but create its own thing entirely to protect Prost itself. So so we created Alpenbloom hard seltzer with a very teeny tiny little badge up top. But that's just for folks in the know, which means nothing.
Yeah.
So, Prost. Yeah. And it tastes delicious too. So we're going to take questions here in a minute if anyone has any. So please throw those in if you do. So just to recap, if you could make the case for or against, again, we kind of see you can go either way. A lot of people come to us in that scenario. You can create an endorsed brand. That can be a strategy that can make sense. Do we have any questions? We've covered a lot of ground already. Do we have anything? Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Jonathan. We will sit in silence for 9 minutes. Let's carry on.
Let's keep moving.
Let's go. The third point that you may arrive at, again, through the rubric, the decision tree, we think a direct tie makes a lot of sense because we might be a generalist brewery. This is where you get into just a straight brand extension. We call it a monolithic house of brand, a monolithic branded house. But in terms of the actual strategy that you are doing, it would be a straight brand extension. A brand extension is maybe one of the easiest to define of this entire presentation. You are just applying your brewery's name to a category outside of your main category, beer. Mm-hmm. So an example would be, XYZ Distilling, XYZ Spirits, something like that. This can make a lot of sense because it, again, obviously leverages your reputation and equity right out of the gate. You don't have to educate people. You don't have to teach them about the values and value props and occasion and flavor and all these other things we need to do to get people excited about a beverage. They just buy it because they like your brewery. And then this is also cool behind the scenes because, distribution partnerships, maybe key accounts, wholesale, like all these different things that we have in place with our brewery brand. We might have a better shot of, and this doesn't have to be, you can do this with other strategies too. This is not just exclusive to brand extensions, but you can take advantage of other existing kind of relationships and channels you have in place. A lot of cool examples here. So Dogfish Head Brewing, Dogfish Head Spirits or Gin or Spirit Distilling, I don't know what they call it, but literally Dogfish Head on that. Rogue Spirits, great example. Big Lug Cocktails, our friends here in Indiana. So Big Lug Brewing, Big Lug Canteen, Big Lug Cocktails, Hospitality Group. And then we get into
Mountain Dew Hard.
I love this. Everyone's poo-pooing this, and that's very short-sighted. This is going to be
This should have come out 5 years ago. They would have beat White Claw.
I think they're still going to.
Yeah.
So Jim Beam, just throwing it right on it. This makes a lot of sense. It makes sense to make an RTD cocktail if you are a spirit brand. I think that's
particularly with Jim Beam, which is probably going to end up in cola at some point anyway. It's like, why not just put all that in the can and go?
And then we get into the seltzer rush. So Bud Light Seltzer, Corona Seltzer, Topo Chico Seltzer, and probably 75 others. Modern Times beer, Modern Times coffee. That's a fun example. Some caveats, some overarching thoughts. You generally want to stay within the same universe. So if you're a brewery, if you're known for making great beer, you can probably make great whiskey too. Sure, that makes sense. If you're a great brewery, can you make frozen dinner meals?
Maybe.
No comment. I just want to leave that there. This is real. It might not make sense. Or that. This is a good example too. Not as good as Colgate lasagna. These are real, folks. You should look them up. The qualities and promises of your extension should make sense. They should intuitively link to your parent brand in some way. And then we get into Budweiser. So Budweiser, Bud Light, and itself an extension of Budweiser from like 1980 or 79, somewhere in there. Zero. The major caveat here, and I actually stopped here. We could have done 2 more screens, but you can very quickly extend yourself into oblivion where you don't really mean anything if you're not careful. So this can obviously happen to any brewery of any size, but you do want to be careful. Even you smaller breweries, you just always have to protect the parent brand. I cannot say that enough. That is the one of the most important points around which all of these decisions pivot. So if you think a direct tie to your parent brand makes sense, you could create a brand extension. Mm-hmm. Take us home, Cody.
So that fourth and final scenario, you think a direct tie would work really well, but you think either this thing's going to take off like gangbusters, or you just want to have a little bit of padding between the new brand and your parent brand. You create a sub-brand under the branded house strategy.
Subbrand. It's a brand within a brand. It's a nested brand.
A sub-brand is closely connected to the parent brand, but augments the meanings and associations of the parent brand. In this case, the parent brand is still the main driver of the sale, but you are introducing the second element, which down the line could even inform a standalone brand. Mm-hmm. Sub-brands allow you to reach a different audience that the parent brand might not be able to credibly target on its own. So it's almost like it's putting a little spin on your shot in terms of what you're putting out into the market. You might be able to reach into new age groups or new consumer categories. It just depends on what you're trying to do.
As long as there's some sort of, it's not too big a stretch for your parent brand to get there, but you need a little more oomph to get there. That's
kind of, you know, when you see it case by case.
Mm-hmm. Like everything we're talking about here. It can make sense. What just happened?
I don't know.
I feel like I just skipped 4 slides.
What have we done?
Similar points that we've seen in the past. This sets you up to grow or spin off as needed. That's actually going to be kind of the central theme that we talk about with this approach. You can create a very powerful brand. I mean, you mentioned spinning off on its own. You can get with your own line extensions, your own co-branding, your own merch. We'll show an example of that here in a minute. And you can bring, so that's another valuable part here. You can bring new audiences to the parent brand itself. You can reach these new audiences that would have no reason to, we'll actually just go here to use an example. New Belgium is an old brewery. They make phenomenal beer, and they were the SHIT when I was starting out drinking craft beer in 2005. I love New Belgium, but there weren't 9,000 breweries back in 2005. So imagine being 22 today and coming of age, and you have no reason to buy a New Belgium beer. That doesn't mean anything about New Belgium. New Belgium makes some of the best beer on the planet, but you can throw a rock and hit 30 breweries, 5 of which are probably making pretty good beer. So New Belgium created Voodoo Ranger, a sub-brand. So Voodoo Ranger by itself, which has now, I think the number I heard is like 4 of the top 30 best-selling craft beers in America are from the Voodoo Ranger line. So you get that 22-year-old drinker that had no reason to care about New Belgium. They buy this beer. They love it because the beer is phenomenal. And then they start to go back upstream and go, well, what else does New Belgium make? So it's a very weird phenomenon. I think it'd be hard to kind of architect from the base, but it's a nice thing that can happen from that. So Voodoo Ranger is a phenomenal example of this. And then you see a lot of this is a great strategy for legacy breweries. Those folks that are dealing with that same exact issue. You know, we're everywhere. We're too ubiquitous. People don't care about, even though we're making the best beer on the planet. You know, we've got billion-dollar labs and QC and everything, but no one cares because there's just so much beer out there. So we create these really targeted brands that people get excited about. Sierra Nevada's Little Thing line. Sam Adams came out of the gate with Wicked, which is really fun. Wicked from Boston, which is really fun.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
Fat Tire. So again, back to New Belgium, but they actually are spinning off. I think this happened last year, spinning off Fat Tire into its own brand, which is really smart. That hits on another issue that I imagine they've been dealing with for years, which is, like Anchor Steam. I want Fat Tire Brewing, like Fat Tire versus New Belgium. So it makes a lot of sense there. And then we get into some big kind of examples that have been around forever. So 805, Dragon's Milk and Stone's Arrogant Bastard are probably like the oldest examples I can think of, but I'm sure there are other ones. But this is an example that I was mentioning earlier. Arrogant Bastard is maybe one of the oldest examples, and this is really smart because if you do this right, it might even not be a sub brand anymore. They might just be its own brand, thus Stone being a house of brands. But this is like co-branding with Metallica and merchandise and lifestyle positioning and stuff. So if you really do it right, you can build this out in a huge way and essentially create another brand. So if you think aligning this new product with your parent brand could make sense, but you also think that there's a significant business opportunity, and we get wishy-washy, you can create a sub brand or an endorsed brand. Either of those strategies could work here. It's very, very kind of fuzzy in there.
That's really about semantics and the balance between the parent brand and the secondary brand, and which one is driving the sale. I would say a sub brand, the parent brand is driving the sale. Endorsed brand, that secondary brand, is driving the sale. But the rules change depending on what you're talking about, which is one of the infuriating things of this as you get into it.
So wrapping up, if your brewery is considering a new brand, you need to consider how worried. I don't know if we should use negative language like that, but do you think that the new extension will align with your parent's brand or reputation, or could it in any way harm it or affect it negatively? There are 4 different kind of answers that you can come up with. And in each of these, and we've already discussed this, so I don't know why I'm telling you what we just told you. I guess that's just what you do when you give a presentation.
This is called a conclusion. This is called structure.
We're concluding.
We're reviewing what we've discussed today. As a rhetorical device.
This has been a journey today. If you want to learn more, now we're going to hit you with a gross commercial.
Bang.
We're writing a book on this topic. I'll make this real quick. Head over to beerbrandingtrends.com, sign up, join our newsletter. This is a monthly collection of field notes covering trends, currents, actionable advice.
Stuff we're seeing here in the studio, whatever.
All day, every day, across the country in our work in beer. So if you're a marketing director, brand director, in-house designer, salesperson, brewery owner, if you want to grow your brewery and sell more beer, you should join this. Also, we have a podcast that debuts here in a couple weeks, November 2nd. So a couple weeks from now, after Halloween. So beerbrandingtrends.com, check it out. We will take questions. I saw one question come up. We have 5 or 10 minutes left, which again, we will sit in silence. You can just watch us drink coffee, or we'll answer this first question. And please, Colin, Jonathan, I saw you guys comment yes earlier. Tell us what you're planning. There was a question here, is over here. What's the difference between a sub brand? We talked about that a touch. What's the difference between a sub brand and endorsed brand? That is very, very fuzzy and black and white. No, very gray rather.
For our purposes of making it easy to understand, it really comes down to what is driving the purchase. Is it the parent brand? Or, so is it New Belgium, or is it the sub brand like Voodoo Ranger? If it is the parent brand driving that purchase in the customer's mind, that's the reason they're checking it out, is because they know New Belgium. That would be a sub brand. If it is someone who's like, oh, Voodoo Ranger, that funny skeleton looks cool, I'm going to grab that, then we would probably call that an endorsed brand. Now you might have
maybe a sub, but yeah.
Oh, okay, my bad. Well,
your brain got your brain got it. Yeah. Carry on.
But see, there you go. Like also, like you could credibly call that an endorsed brand based on how the packaging. So
yeah, what we didn't have time to get into parent brand is driver versus co-driver. There's too much junk here to get into.
It's confusing. It's so confusing that it starts to not.
It is the role to answer that question as succinctly as possible. It is the role of the parent brand being the driver or not. Are you buying this? Are you XYZ Brewery's seltzer? Are you buying this seltzer because it is from Brewery XYZ? Or are you buying Galloping Mare hard seltzer because you like Galloping Mare hard seltzer and it's from Brewery XYZ? Cool, that's really neat. Then that would be an endorsed brand. Clear as mud, right? Any other questions?
We've got one from Dale in Omaha.
What's up, Dale?
He asked if it ever makes sense to have a similar name between a parent brand and a sub brand.
Yeah, of course. That's what's that strategy called?
That is called. So that's a subset of the endorsed brand called a linked name. To give a really easy example that everyone knows, the link between Budweiser and Bud Light. That's a linked name endorsement because you're taking a piece of that original parent brand and moving it down into your new sub brand.
Oh, McDonald's, McCafe, High Low, Two Hearted. What's Two Hearted's locale? Low Hearted.
I don't know if they have a locale right or not. But
Jonathan has asked. We've done a couple seltzers on tap, premise only. It didn't really stand out among other beers, but were really well received. I'm curious to see. This isn't really anything about brand architecture. I'm just curious to see how hard seltzer does when we return to on-prem. I wonder, are your hard seltzers
lighthearted? That's what the
lighthearted. Yeah. Thank you, Colin. Jonathan, are your seltzers? Do they have kind of hue to them, or are they clear? I don't know if that matters. I just feel like a hard seltzer would do better if it had color in it. And I'm making that up, but.
On premise, maybe where people can see a server walking across the tap room with a bunch of colorful.
I feel like you just need to be served in a can. I don't know. Lighthearted. Thank you. Have you thought about packaging those, Jonathan? And we are going to wrap up here in 5 or so minutes. So if anyone else has any questions, please get them in there. Lighthearted. That is what it is. What did I say? No-hearted?
No heart. Yeah. That's kind of twisted. No-hearted.
We use fruit purees. So most of the
they
time,
kind of have some color come through.
I think that would work well. Look kind of like a mead or something.
Yeah, that's been kind of an interesting thing too, is do we attack full flavored cider or seltzer? Sorry, not cider. Full flavored seltzers, or do we go from more refined, more White Claw-y ones, or there's kind of a spectrum all between there too of the type that you can make. And I think the type of brewery you are can help dictate what that ends up looking like too. So you're going for big fruit flavors, or you're going for kind of subtle oils and essences, or what is the category you're trying to attack?
I'd attach it to an occasion. I think that'd be easier to stand out.
Yeah, that too.
Tiny Nano, just got a tabletop canner. Sweet. I want a tabletop canner for the office.
What would we can?
That's a good question. Running mare. Hard cider.
Galloping equine. Horse water.
Hopefully you all enjoyed this talk. We've been working on a book about this topic for about 18 months. And this is our first time kind of taking it and putting it into a public form. So let us know, email us, follow us on Instagram, all that stuff. Let us know if this is actually helpful or useful to you. And we'll know if we need to scrap this entire book project or not. Scott asked a question, just curious. Any broad comments on brands and sub-brands or endorsed brands sharing shelf space or retail, good or bad thing? That, I think a good way to think about that would be, let's look at a monolithic house or branded house. You can build one solid brand. So especially if you're starting out, I think it makes a lot of sense to build a core brand, a big brand out of the gate, because you know where to put your dollars and consumers know where you're kind of telling people where you are and who you are. So I don't think it's an issue. As far as maybe if I can read into your question a little bit, are you cannibalizing sales or potentially hurting yourself? That's why we're talking about brand architecture. A part of this process would be making sure that we are not producing a product that is going to eat into existing sales, hurt us in any way. I mean, we're talking a lot about fuzzy things like hurting our positioning and our reputation, but I mean, you can also just hurt your sales if you're putting out a product that maybe people want to buy more than.
I would say the vast majority of craft businesses are not going to do the Budweiser thing of having so many extensions on the shelf next to each other that it just becomes kind of comical. Bud Light Lemonade Platinum, I don't even know what's in that can anymore when I see a label like that. And I don't see most craft breweries getting into that position.
That's a heuristic from positioning. I think it's Jack Trout and Allery's talk about that. It's actually called the grocery store test. And this is a book written in the 80s. So that's fun when you think about how many thousands of extensions back that was. They have this example in their book called the grocery store test. And it's you tell your friend to go to Kroger and buy some Bud Light.
Okay,
and
looking for Bud
Cody's
Light.
He's there in Kroger. He's got his little cart.
Yep.
He's looking for Bud Light, and he sees 45 different offerings from Bud Light, many of which are lemonades and lemonade seltzer extensions. He doesn't know what to buy. That's a really heavy-handed example, but it is a fun example of what is Bud Light. Is Bud Light Bud Light, or is Bud Light hard seltzer? We can't link to it here because I'll break it. But Bud Light just put out an ad campaign addressing how confusing their extension is. It's like the block. If you search for block it out, and it's like a lineman putting his fingers over the seltzer or whatever.
Yeah, it's like they've actually walked back their own strategy in those commercials where it's covering Bud Light so that you see seltzer or whatever, just to clarify what category they're even in, because in that case, I think they've just confused the hell out of everyone.
Shout out for writing the foreword to our new book.
Yeah. Nice.
Missed opportunity for Nightmare Dark Brew.
Nightmare Dark Brew. Halloween's coming up.
AR, VR. I think that's going to be huge in advertising. I think AR, VR is going to take over the entire world. I mean, I don't see a way that it doesn't in general. We're not smart enough to really give you any like future casting, but I just see TV and gaming and phone technology all kind of converging to that in the future.
Yeah, it's hard to guess.
It's very, very clunky now, but we're seeing a lot of really fun, like I think everyone knows about 19 Crimes. This is a question from Tyler. Everyone knows 19 Crimes. They were the first one to do it really well, where you hold your phone up. I think it still works actively. Yeah. If you go off-prem and look at their label and it tells a story, it's a wonderful campaign. And then we had a lot of people like kind of want to rip that off directly. It's like, no, you can do this differently and better. But
yeah, and again, as it's still kind of in it, it's got its like baby legs still as a channel. And I think as technology catches up and people start to understand it more, some really cool opportunities are going to rise there that we haven't even seen yet that are going to make 19 Crimes look like child's play. I saw a 19 Crimes label with Snoop Dogg on it at Brewery last night. How about that?
I saw one with Martha Stewart on it. I didn't see that. I just know that they do a lot of work.
She
together.
has committed at least 19 crimes. That's slander.
She did. I think on kind of just general things where the future of branding go, I think for you guys out there working at breweries, we have no idea how big we have no idea how big DTC is going to be. I think that if I were running my own brewery right now, I would be going very hard into figuring out technology stack and channels and how I can actually get in play, like all these like shitty CBD companies that are around like the Midwest, because they're just like there waiting for cannabis to be legal so they can start selling weed. Like I think you need to be doing that for DTC. I think that's so a major
pickup
thing
and delivery and really developing that. And probably honestly, a lot of breweries are already doing this in every state across the country, but lobbying for those laws to be more amenable to direct to consumer as well.
Yeah, we've seen, we wrote about it in our 2021 branding trends piece. I think Great Notion Brewing has done, I mean, they've done just a stellar job. If you check out Great Notion, they have an app and everything as well. But I think that's something just in general, like where the industry is going, it's going to be very valuable. We have 2 minutes left. This has been fun. Any other questions? Thank you, Scott. I appreciate it. Anything over here?
Harambe Kong says, great job. And I say to you, Harambe Kong Jr., thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming and sitting with us.
Nightmare Dark Brew.
Yeah. We're getting ready for spooky season.
Where's our skull?
He's over
there.
So I'm not going to go get it. Everyone's going to hear my creaky knees on the microphone, and I just don't need that.
Really need to talk to a doctor.
I can't.
Everyone go to beerbrandingtrends.com. Sign up for that. There.
Check it out. We made all this neat art for you to see.
Now we sit in silence.
And keep an eye out for our book, because we are kind of developing our thinking about this and applying it to projects as we go. And sometime next year, we should have a more formalized and practical guide for everyone to.
It might not even be a book. It might just be
some sort. Let's just call it a resource with a capital R.
That's good.
And hopefully it'll be something where you can kind of comb through it and think about these things and use them to make decisions about your own product lineups. Thank you, Tyler. It's really nice of you to say that. Thank you for stalking us. Kind of weird. I wasn't going to say anything, but.
Do you like my information or Cody's more?
Who's more informational? Isaac talks a lot more because.
filling the silence.
Like I can just kind of coast, and he just goes. You just wind him up, and it's pretty sweet. I just get to sit here and drink coffee.
I think Andrew's going to kick us off here in a minute. So we are going to leave. We're going to close this browser. This has been real. If anyone has, if you have any questions on any of this, Cody, damn it, Tyler.
Yes. 2 for Cody. Yes.
Guys.
Yes. Popularity contest. I win.
I should have worn a hat. That's what it is.
Thank you guys. Check out beerbrandingtrends.com.
Sign up
along with us. We got some cool stuff going on.
Shoot us an email, message us if you have any questions on anything we've touched on today. We'd love to kind of answer that and field it. So yeah, thank you all. We'll catch up with you all soon. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.